Hello, students! Today we are going to study a very interesting chapter from our environment. Have you ever looked at a garden, or maybe a small pond, and wondered how everything there works together? All the plants, the insects, the water, it's like a small world of its own. Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore today. We'll be learning about ecosystems, what they are, how they are structured, and how energy moves through them. So let's begin.
So this is what we will cover in our lesson today. First, we'll understand the basic question. What is an ecosystem? After that, we will look at its living and non-living parts. Then, we will discuss the roles of different living things. We will also study about food chains and trophic levels, and a very important concept called the 10% energy rule. Finally, we'll see how it all comes together in food webs.
So let's begin. Our first topic is, what is an ecosystem? And to understand this, we must first talk about the word we use all the time, our environment. So, what is the environment? It's everything that is around us. Just look around you right now. The air that you are breathing, the light from the sun, the soil, the water, and of course, all the living things like plants, animals, and even us humans. All these things, both living and non-living, together make up our environment. Now, these ecosystems, they are everywhere. We can see them in nature like in a large forest or a lake or a small pond. These are called natural ecosystems. But did you know we also create ecosystems? For example, a garden, or the field where farmers grow crops, or even a fish aquarium in your home. These are man-made or artificial ecosystems. The important thing to remember is that in all these places, the same basic interactions are happening.
So this brings us to the proper definition of an ecosystem. An ecosystem is made up of all the interacting organisms in an area, along with the non-living parts of the environment. The key word here is interacting. It's not just a collection of things, it is a system where living and non-living components work together. All right, so now that we know what an ecosystem is, let's look at its two essential components, the living and the non-living parts.
These two parts have scientific names. The living parts are called biotic components. Bio means life, so this includes all the plants, animals, bacteria, basically every living thing. The non-living parts are called abiotic components. The A in front of biotic means not, so these are the non-living things like sunlight, water, soil, and temperature.
Now, let's talk a little more about these abiotic factors, things like temperature, rainfall, wind, soil, minerals, and of course, sunlight. You see, these non-living things are the foundation of any ecosystem. Just think for a moment. Can any plant grow without sunlight, water, and soil? No, of course not. So these abiotic factors decide what kind of living things can survive in a particular place.
Okay, so we have understood the abiotic parts. Now let's focus on the biotic, or the living components. Based on how they get their food and energy, we can divide all living organisms into three main groups: producers, consumers, and decomposers. First, let's talk about the producers. They are also called autotrophs. Auto means self, and troph means food. So these are the organisms that can produce their own food. All the green plants and some bacteria are producers. They use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to make their food through a process you all know, photosynthesis. They are the foundation of every single ecosystem. Next up, we have the consumers. Their other name is heterotrophs. Hetero means other. So these organisms get their food from others. They can't make it themselves. All animals, from a small grasshopper to a big tiger, are consumers. It is very important to remember that all consumers depend on producers. Some eat plants directly, while others eat animals that have eaten plants. So directly or indirectly, the energy comes from the producers. Now, we can classify these consumers based on what they eat. We have herbivores, which eat only plants. Then there are carnivores, which eat other animals. We also have omnivores, who eat both plants and animals. And finally, there are parasites, which live on other living organisms and get their food from them. And the third group is the decomposers. These are nature's cleaners. They are tiny microorganisms like bacteria and fungi. What is their job? They break down the dead bodies of plants and animals and also animal waste. By doing this, they return all the important nutrients back into the soil. These nutrients are then used by the producers, the plants, to grow. So you see, decomposers are very, very important. They complete the cycle.
So, we have seen that producers make food, and consumers eat the producers or other consumers. This process of eating and being eaten forms a sequence, and this is what we call a food chain. Let's see how it works.
A food chain simply shows who eats whom in an ecosystem. It shows the flow of energy. For example, if you look at the slide, in a grassland, grass is the producer. It is eaten by a deer, which is a consumer, and then the deer is eaten by a lion, which is another consumer. This is a simple food chain.
Now, each step in a food chain is called a trophic level. It's a very simple concept. The first trophic level is always the producers, so the plants. The second trophic level will be the primary consumers. These are the herbivores that eat the plants. The third trophic level has the secondary consumers, the carnivores that eat the herbivores. And sometimes there's a fourth trophic level with the tertiary consumers, which are the top carnivores. This leads us to a very important question. When a deer eats grass, does it get all the energy from the grass? And when a lion eats the deer, does it get all the energy from the deer? The answer is no, and this is why food chains are usually short. Let's understand the rule that governs this.
The first thing we must know is that the flow of energy in an ecosystem is always in one direction. We call this unidirectional. The energy comes from the sun, it is captured by the producers, and then it passes to the consumers. The energy never flows backwards. And at each step, a lot of energy is lost to the environment as heat.
So exactly how much energy is passed on? This brings us to a very important rule that you must remember. It is called the 10% law. This law states that only about 10% of the energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next one. The remaining 90% is lost. Let's make this very clear with an example. Suppose the producers, the plants, have 10,000 joules of energy from the sun. Now, when the primary consumers eat these plants, how much energy will they get? Only 10%. So 10% of 10,000 is 1,000 joules. Okay? Now, when the secondary consumers eat the primary consumers, they will get 10% of 1,000 joules, which is only 100 joules. And finally, the tertiary consumers will get 10% of 100, which is just 10 joules. Do you see how little energy is available at the top? This is exactly why food chains have only 3 or 4 trophic levels. There isn't enough energy left to support more levels.
So, we have been talking about food chains, which are straight lines. But in nature, things are not so simple. An animal usually eats more than one type of food. This brings us to a more realistic concept called a food web. Let's look at it, and then we will summarize our lesson. What is a food web? It is basically a network of many interconnected food chains. If you look at the diagram, you can see that an organism can be a part of many different food chains. For example, a snake might eat a rat, but it can also be eaten by a hawk. This branching and interconnecting of food chains forms a food web. Now, there is a very common question asked: why is a food web more stable than a food chain? The answer is quite simple. Because in a food web, an organism has multiple options for food. So if one of its food sources is not available, it can eat something else and survive. This provides more stability to the entire ecosystem. All right, students, let us quickly revise the main points we have learned today. First, an ecosystem has 2 parts: biotic, which are the living parts, and abiotic, which are the non-living parts. Second, the living organisms are divided into 3 roles: producers, consumers, and decomposers. Third, we learned that energy flows in only one direction in a food chain, through different trophic levels. Fourth, and very importantly, only about 10% of energy is transferred to the next level. And finally, food webs, which are interconnected food chains, make an ecosystem more stable. Please go through these points carefully. They are very important for your examinations.